everyone! I hope you all are doing well and that you had a wonderful week. Are you guys ready for the next part of our story? Okay, so to remember where we're at in this story, God has rescued his people from slavery in Egypt. He brought them out into the deserts, and he gave them his commandments to keep them safe and to help them to live well. Now he's leading them into their own land, into the promised land. But there's one problem. There's people that currently live in this land, and they don't love God, and they don't like his people. But God has a plan for what is going to happen and how to give this land to his people. Are you guys ready to hear it? All right, here we go. Finally, God's people came to the land that God had promised them. He said, "Send some people into the land to see what it is like." So Moses chose 12 men. He said, "Go into the land, then come back and tell us, is it good or is it bad? Are the people strong or are the people weak?" The men went into the new land. They brought back some fruits. They said, "It is a good land, but the people are strong. They will fight us and they will win." The Israelites were afraid. "We cannot take the land," they said. But Joshua and Caleb said, "Do not be afraid. God is with us." But the people would not listen to them. God was angry with his people. They did not believe that he would help them. So God said, "You cannot have the land yet. You will have to travel for 40 more years." And that's just what they did. So for 40 more years, the people walked through the desert, and for 40 more years, they learned what it was like to be God's people. As the years went by, Moses grew old. Moses grew old, and he died. After Moses had died, God gave his people a new leader. This new leader's name was Joshua. Now, if you remember, Joshua was one of the spies that 40 years earlier had gone into the promised land and had told the people not to be afraid because God was going to give them the land. Now, he is their new leader. He led God's people into the new land that God had promised them. The first city that they came to was a city named Jericho. This city had a big wall around it. It was so large that people didn't know how they were going to get through it. They were very afraid. Joshua, he looked about his people, and he chose 2 men to go into Jericho and to see what it was like. The king of Jericho found out that the men were in his city, and he wanted to catch them. But they went to the house of a lady named Rahab. She hid them on her roof. The king's men could not find them there. Rahab's house was part of the city wall. So when it was night, she let the 2 men down through her window by a rope. They promised that they would help her later, since she had helped them. The city of Jericho was very strong, but God told Joshua how to take it. And so Joshua did just as God told him. he marched his army around the city one time each day for 6 days. The next day, they marched around the city 7 more times. Then the priests blew their trumpets. The people shouted, and the wall of Jericho fell down. The 2 men ran back to Rahab's house. They helped her to get out of the city safely. Then Rahab and her family lived with God's people. And this, my friends, is where our story ends today, where God has led his people into their new land. And along the way, they've had some people join them, like Rahab. And that is all we have for today. Thanks, guys. See you later.
Now let's do it.
In today's story, we learned about God leading his people into the land that he had promised him. And we meet one very special man that's very different from all the rest, and his name is Joshua. So what made Joshua so different from the rest of the people? Well, one thing that we see in him is that he had faith and he had hope. He had faith to believe that God would fulfill his promise and that they didn't need to be afraid of all of the scary men because God had told him that they were going to give them this land. He also had hope that God was going to care for them even when things seemed impossible. So Joshua was able to see through all of the scary people and through this crazy, huge city and know that God was going to fulfill his promise to them. So he had faith and he had hope. He also had strength and he had courage. So how did he have strength and courage? How did he develop this? Well, in the book of Numbers, which is where the story is in the Bible, we hear that Joshua meditated and studied the Word of God day and night. He was reading and he was asking questions about the Bible all day long and all night long. His mind was always thinking about it. And so he knew the stories of the Bible. He knew that God had been faithful to fulfill his promises to everyone that had come before Joshua. And Joshua could believe that God would fulfill his promises for them now and for the future. And so that's what we do when we come together. We study the Word of God and we meditate on it and we ask questions and we wonder and we think about these stories of where God has shown that he is a fulfiller of promises. And so we too can take courage and we can have strength that God will fulfill all of his promises. Even when things seem a little scary or uncertain, we can look back through the stories of the Bible and we can see that God has always been faithful. He will always come and he will always fight for us. And so, my friends, take courage, be full of strength, for the Lord your God is with you and he walks with you. Well, that is all we have for today. I will see you all soon. I miss you all and I hope you are doing well. Love you guys. Bye.